Okay, we are live today with Inside Gateway, and I have a very special guest with me, Leanne
You
Fischer.
have to say that.
No, I don't have to say that. I've had the privilege of working with Paul and Leanne as house parents, and I enjoyed our few months that we were together at Maple House. So I do think this is going to be a pleasure. I'm looking forward to today, just kind of having a conversation, getting the opportunity for the audience to get a little bit of a glimpse into your experiences with Gateway Woods. So why don't we start off with an easy kind of question. When did you first hear about Gateway Woods?
Well, I'm really old. Well, relatively. To most people who work here as house parents. But I'm going to go way back. So when I was a kid, Gateway Woods was a twinkle in a lot of people's eyes that they wanted to have a facility to work with kids and to help kids. And my parents, I can remember my parents talking about giving land for Gateway Woods. And I can remember feeling excited about the thought, like, I could have that by my house and I could go to school. Well, as we all know, that wasn't God's plan, and it ended up in Leo. And it seemed, as a kid, I really enjoyed reading. I love to read. But anyway, a couple books that I read over and over were, one was called Ready Made Family, and one was Runaway Alice, and both were about foster kids. So to me, that seemed like such a noble thing to do, such a noble enterprise. And my mom had that kind of interest, but not as much as my dad, so I always felt like it'd be hard to find someone who felt that way. So it just seemed like a distant thing. It was 5 hours away. I didn't like to, anyway, it would just seem like so far away from me, you know. And so when my husband repented, one time we were in the young group together, and one time we were painting in the basement of another sister's house, and there was a group of us painting, and he said he was going to go to Gateway Woods and volunteer. I was like, whoa. And it just kind of hit me that I was going to marry him. That's the weirdest thing, but it's like, wow, here's a guy, you know, that is interested maybe in something that I'm, or in ministry, in what I am. So I thought for a while, and I didn't. He will tell you that I never gave him any encouragement because I wanted it only to be God, you know. Yeah. And he will say one time I gave him encouragement, and that was, there's something happened at a young group thing that I really wanted to talk to him about because we were good friends. And he left early, and he said I looked disappointed that he was leaving. And he'll tell you that's the only encouragement he ever got. But because I just wanted to be something on his heart, you know, not something that I've got much better at flirting now that I'm married. So anyway, and on his part, he worked at the gas station uptown in Roanoke, and at one time when we were young, we lived across the road from each other in Roanoke, but his family moved a lot. My dad never moved because when he got married, he was the youngest, and he stayed in the house where he had grown up. Okay. So I never moved, but he moved a lot. But we were still in the same school district. We didn't really do anything with each other growing up or in high school or anything like that. But so when he repented, this was before he repented, he would work at the gas station uptown, and Tim Souter had repented, and he was really on fire for the Lord. And he would walk, because he had back problems even back then. He would walk a lot in Roanoke, or maybe I shouldn't presume. Anyway, he would walk, and he would stop at the gas station. He would witness to Paul, and so he told Paul that about Gateway Woods, and he would come out and volunteer here, and that's where Paul first heard about Gateway Woods. Wow! So you get a 2-for-1 here. You get 2 stories. So, so like I said, then we were engaged, and I'm not sure. It was something at the Roanoke Fellowship Hall, and I'm not sure why we were there, but one of the Hares from Peoria talked to us. I think he must have been on the board at the time. I think it was probably Jim Hare.
I think it was John.
You think it was John? Because Jim
I've heard your husband tell this story before.
Well, you know, my husband doesn't always remember everything just like I do either. I think it was Jim.
It's not so.
The first summer we worked here, Jim and Virginia volunteered out here, so. And see, I don't remember John and Doc coming out. Except John was on the board. So it could have been John. It could have been. Like I said, we're
One of
getting
those
older.
hairs. Yeah.
Not old. We're getting older. So, anyway, he talked about being house parents, or he talked to something about Gateway. I can't remember the conversation exactly. And Paul talked to me afterwards about it. So we had never discussed this before we were engaged or anything, but he said something about it, and he knew that I was interested too. He this is the way he tells the story since he's not here. He says, so then Leanne felt like there was a reason to marry me. I'm not really sure if I felt that way or not, but there must be some reason he says that. So we got married, and about a year later, it just like he just wasn't happy. He'd be like, and things were a little slow at his uncle's. He worked at his uncle's cabinet shop. His uncle Buster Wilmer Fisher, who was a very important person in his life, and so we actually came out and interviewed for the job on our first anniversary.
Oh wow!
That's what we did on our first anniversary.
Wow.
Brenda Whelan was in the hospital. She was having Daisha Whelan.
What year was this that was your first time coming out to Gateway as house parents?
Well, we got married in 80. Okay. We came out as single. We came out as a couple, but we were engaged.
Okay.
We stayed with Doug and Sue. That was before we got married. We got married in May 1980. So we stayed with Doug and Sue for a weekend, and I can remember either Sue. I think Doug asked me to make breakfast on Sunday morning, so we were there for the weekend. I can remember being like in a panic to think about fixing breakfast for all these people, And there was a girl from a church family who was here, and her dad was also visiting. I remember her dad was a truck driver. Her dad was like, I'll fix breakfast. So that was the first time I came out here. He had volunteered as a single man. Yeah. And then the summer after we were married, we volunteered. I don't know if it was for 1 or 2 weeks.
Okay.
The summer after, so we were in May, and that summer we volunteered for 2 weeks. Or 1 week. I actually can't remember. And we slept in what is now the office in Hickory, which was East House. Brace and Brenda were house parents. Did I answer your whole question?
When did you start your second time around? So we're getting there, I think. So like when you started as house parent, was it 1981, 82?
1981. We moved here July 1981. So our anniversary was May 25th, 1981. Our first anniversary. That's when we applied for the job. Then we moved in July. Okay. I was 20, so legally I couldn't really work. My other job, besides being an alternate house parent, was working in the office as a secretary. Okay. So I was kind of like put down as a secretary till I turned 21. And there was something else I was going to say about that. But it just slipped my mind.
So how long were you guys out that first stint?
What do you mean out?
So how long were you at Gateway Woods?
First, it was only 15 months, which, considering all that happened, like with our engagement, our marriage and everything, seemed really weird to me. There were 2 girls that were going to be adopted, and I think we thought, for some crazy reason, that they would allow a young couple that wasn't established to adopt 2 girls because we thought that would give them more stability. And then Paul started working with Brace Whelan. I still helped the Gateway, kind of like I'm doing now. It's just strange. And then we came back and lived there for like 3 months when a couple left suddenly and he still worked at Whelan Furniture. So that was 18 months altogether.
So I'm curious, that was your first time around. Your second time around, how long have you been working the second stint at Gateway Woods?
Well, 5.5 years.
5.5 years. So altogether 7-ish years, is that
about right? 7.5, yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's a pretty long period of time for a house parent.
I don't know. It didn't seem that long when I look back on it.
The house parent, Clint often says that house parent years are a lot like dog years. So
49? That's awesome.
It seems a lot
longer.
That's
like almost my entire life.
Yeah. So, I'm curious, you mentioned it, kind of like your position now. So you spent 5+ years the second time as house parents, but now you're kind of in transition point. What are you currently doing? Or what would you say your role is now?
Well,
or
I suppose you could say I'm a house parent, quasi house parent, because I sign I'm kind of running appointments or helping. I'm actually helping mostly in Oak now, but I'm also doing a few things for the office. So I'm back to being not a secretary, but paperwork. And so like when I take a child to an appointment, I sign my name and put custodian beside it because that's the legal term for what we do. And so I guess I'm a part-time house parent. Maybe you could say that. Yeah. Clint can chime in if he doesn't agree with me.
No, that sounds reasonable to me based on some of kind of your roles and responsibilities you currently have. What's your favorite part of your job? And you can go, when I say your job, I would look at just house parenting in general. What's your favorite part of house parenting? Because that's where you spent the bulk of your time throughout the years.
Well, Chad, I started out in your house. And
that was her favorite time. You heard that? You heard it first here. Maple House with Chad and Christy was her favorite. No, I'm just kidding.
Actually, you guys are great to start out with. And Abby Wiegand, we often tell people that Abby Wiegand was like our best trainer, I'm not really sure because she's the one we worked with.
Yes.
And she was a great house parent, and I can remember a Sunday she was working, we were working, and Paul went outside, and then he came back in for something, and Abby's like, you really need to be out there, Paul. She would speak up to tell us what we needed to do, and I'm not very good at that kind of thing, so I really appreciate that about her. And okay, Leanne, now you need to sit down with her, and you need to go over this. And things like that. That's not always easy to do with someone who's, like older than you. So she was really great. And, so the reason I talk about your house, because there was something about your house that hasn't been true of every house. And that was that you really had a culture where games were a big part of it, And I've had kids in other houses that'll be like, oh, we don't play games here. Oh, we don't play board games. I don't play board games. And I know that Bruce has said in the past that, you almost have to teach them to play games. I mean, games are so productive because they teach you things. I mean, they teach some very basic things, but they also teach strategy. They your mind is working. You're not just in front of a screen absorbing things.
Yeah.
I tell you, as far as being a mom, like my favorite memories are my kids sitting around the table playing together. One goes over and plays the piano for a while, and then one or two might sing, and then they're playing games together. And just to see them now, even though I've made like millions of mistakes that I wish I could do over, that's just the greatest joy of my heart. It's like a resident asked me recently, like, what my favorite thing to do is, and it's like to be around my kids when they're just together and playing and being together. So your house has such a culture that, like you sit down, you play a game. And after you had left and we were doing double duty in Hickory and Maple, that summer, one of your residents taught me to play Dominion.
Okay, that was a popular game for a while.
And what was so funny was I won the first two games, and I don't think I've won one since.
Beginner's luck? I don't know.
And another thing I loved about your house, okay, was like after supper we would just sit around and talk. Like Abby would get a game like not What If, because that's what my kids play, but where you say the worst thing happens, then the best.
Yeah. Was it a game or was it just kind of a reflection time?
Well, no, it wasn't. It was a game. Like one person would say, they would do a line and said, like, oh man, I wish I could remember.
There's ones that we've done in the past where we'd have a story where someone
it's a story. It's a story.
But each one had a phrase, and then you had to go around the table, and so you would just add on to that story that someone.
Right, but one person would say something that would get somebody, the character in the situation. The next one would say something really bad that happened, and the next person would say something good that happened. And anyway, I just remember just some great times around the table, and great stories that would come out of the kids. One when he started to Leo High School, he told us at the table about talking to a Marine recruiter and how he told the reading recruiter that he wouldn't carry a gun. And he talked to him about a character from Ruth in the Bible. And I wish I could remember the story because it was just so great. But anyway, and I remember great times sitting around the table in other houses, laughing and talking at mealtime. And, you know, that is some of my favorite times. There was one girl at Oak that she was like, it was so hard for her to leave. She didn't want to leave. And one thing she mentioned, she was like at table time. She was like, you know, my family never sat around the table. My family never sat around and ate a meal together. They never sat like this and talked. Yeah. Now, I'm hoping that she's been able to establish that with her own family. But that's just such an important thing that so many kids don't get. Even my own kids nowadays, I mean, we don't sit around much, but when they were younger, we did, you know. Yeah. But
speaking of your kids, we did have a question that came in regards to that.
Okay.
Dustin wants to know, well, first he says, I'm thankful for Paul and Leanne and the example they set for Mandy and I. We love them so much. Oh. And he's curious, after raising 8 of your own kids, what has translated from raising your own kids to raising Gateway residents? Are there differences?
Oh, I would say not that much translated. I mean, it's just a whole different ballgame. It really is. Yeah. My own kids, I mean, I look back and I have so many regrets, and I think, I mean, I told my mom this before. It's like, Mom, the only reason my kids are the great kids they are is because you prayed for us all the time, you know? That's the only reason, because, you know, I would just want to go over and do everything again if I could,
but you guys are unique in the sense that you came in having already raised some teens. Most of our house parents just have young kids. But you know, my kids were not. I mean, I got one call where one of my kids said, "Mom, I'm at the police station." Until I heard all the laughter in the background of his friends laughing, I knew that he was joking. I never got that call except as a prank. You know, and it's not really me. It's not really anything we did. I didn't have these situations that these kids are in, that just like thinking of, I don't know. To me, it's a whole different ballgame, and the whole supervision issue is so different. I mean, I wish more that what I've learned now could translate to my own children, you know, playing more games, doing more things with them. And I haven't been that successful in a house where they don't want to be engaged, trying to engage them, you know. It's just that I remember those are my favorite times, when you were in a house where I would try to play chess with residents and would lose every time, until I'm like, no, I'm not playing chess at Maple House ever again.
But your husband would play.
Oh, my husband's good at chess. My husband, I don't play my husband, because when we were first married, we used to play chess, and he'd go like, "Oh, Leanne, you don't want to do that." It's like, no, we don't play chess, because we end up in a fight. So, see, with my husband in games, the only time I can ever beat him is before he's learned the rules. A new game. Okay, I may be able to beat him once or twice. After that, no, because he's very strategical. I mean, once his mind can start working on strategy, I'm lost, because I don't want to work that hard.
You just want to have fun, right?
Right,
enjoy
exactly.
The experience.
Yeah, I can have some strategy, but I need some luck in there, and if I lose, I mean, let's face it, sometimes you play with people, if they get too far ahead, you know, you pull back, because I'm not a very competitive person, you know. It's just like, I don't want to stomp somebody in the ground. I may want to win, but
a lot of us like to win.
So my favorite memories are of like sitting around the table, laughing and joking. One of the challenges of that can be that you know, you're the whole thing of your relationship, getting to know kids. It can be hard sometimes to keep sustaining that for a long period of time. Yeah. You know, like I worry a little bit now, because if I'm helping out on campus, like doing appointments, I may not know that kid very well, you know, and it takes time and talking, and
sometimes it can be hard to do that over and over and over again. And so, and one of the challenges can be, you want to be fair, but yet they're all different. They all have different needs. And how do you balance that out? How do you make it look fair? There's a lot of balancing going on. And as you know, our greatest desire is to share the gospel. And one of the hardest things, like I remember something you told me. You said, sometimes the 10 Commandments can be a good place to start. Like that's God's word written on tablets of stone. And lately I thought, the problem is they don't even accept some things that we accept.
Very much so.
There was one resident that we had at your house. I can remember reading an essay that he wrote about lying. And he said, he had beautiful handwriting, gorgeous handwriting. And he said, lying, telling the truth does not work in my world. But while I'm here, I'm going to try to tell the truth. And just think about that. They're like, you know what? Your values don't work where I am. That's so hard to pass the gospel on, because even like taking things. One resident I remember, as far as she was concerned, if she took money out of if she stole money, it's like, that's me getting even with the man because I've been oppressed, or whatever. Yeah. So, there's a whole different mindset. You're working, and that's one of the greatest challenges is, and I can remember one house talking about evolution. I actually know a lot about evolution, because I wrote my senior paper in high school, which I realize we're talking high school here, and I've read a lot of books, okay? But in his mind, it's like science equals truth equals evolution. You guys don't know what you're talking about. It was hard to even reason with them, Yeah. This was a kid who had smoked a lot of marijuana, It's like, how do you even say the right things to help him understand? Yeah. So,
we're in a culture right now that many of the kids that come are definitely coming from a different vantage point than we are. They have different life experiences. They obviously have different traumas and stuff they went through, and I would say very often it seems like many of them have very little exposure to the gospel. So when you're talking about, like when Dustin asked a question about how does it translate with your own kids, our kids, thankfully have been brought up and they've gone to church, they've gone to Sunday school, they've read the Bible, they understand the truth, and so there definitely is challenges when you have kids that come in that don't believe there's a God, and I remember a number of kids that they come in and that's your profession, but it's still, to me, what's neat is seeing that even you may not have one of those kids convert to Christianity there, but I've seen kids wrestle with truth, as you were consistent and you share truth with them and you show them love, that over time the Spirit can start to kind of challenge them, and maybe at very least there's seeds that are planted that we don't know, that later on can produce fruit. But
and there's even seeds being planted even before we come. I can remember one girl, she had been in lockup for quite a while. She was involved in a fairly serious crime, but not the instigator really. But she said that she prayed, or there was a black woman who would come to lockup and talk to them about God like every Thursday or something. Mm-hmm. And she said, so I prayed that God would put me in a place where I could be with my child. She knew she was going to be in placement, And then when she found out about Gateway, that she was coming to Gateway, she says, so I said, God, you really heard my prayer, like that was, and that was even before she came. So, and she's one that asked me, and this is such a leading question, it gives you such opportunity. She, in church one time, she leaned over and she said, like your kids have never been on probation. Like she and the rest of her siblings have been on probation, and they would actually like go 3 at a time to see the probation officer. She's like, your kids haven't been. Now how did you do that? I mean, what an opportunity. And especially working at Oak House, you're not only influencing them, but you're guiding them in raising children who are the next generation, you know. Not that every resident on here will not have that, will probably have a child, you know, once. So no matter where you are, you just don't know how far your influence goes. So, you know, I mean, what a leading question for her to ask me. And then one time she had read a devotion in the morning, and this was about the question she asked me in church. She's like, Leanne, I was reading this devotion this morning. It talked about the older women teaching the younger women and mentoring them. And that's just like what you were doing with me. I mean, like, what a blessing, what a moment, you know.
Yeah. And
how special that is.
I'm thankful that God gives us those moments.
Yeah,
because there's a lot of tough ones in between those moments, as we both know. But
you have those. And like you said, you're working with teenagers, so you have to realize you don't always see the fruit, but it's you plant and you water and sometimes so there's something I wanted to say about
yeah, we're cruising right through a lot of these questions here. we're if you have
I know what I wanted to say.
Okay.
So I don't know if you remember when you were, I mean, you probably do, you're younger than me, but like when I first became a Christian, my first Christmas, all you can think is about, this is the birth of Jesus. And you hear hymns, well not hymns, but carols, and they're talking about Jesus, and you're like, and you see people just walking around, you're like, don't they realize they're talking about Jesus? I mean, this is the Savior of the world. And the same goes for Easter. You know, this whole holiday is about Jesus. He rose from the dead, you know, and you just want to like
shout it from the rooftops.
Right, exactly. And another thing I can remember feeling at that same time was how I wish everyone could have been raised like I was, you know, or raised in. Now for me, you know, I was young. I was thinking I was a Christian because that's what I knew. And as we know, there's many ways to hear the gospel, but everyone should be raised, you know, like I was, so that they each at least have the opportunity, you know. Yeah. And that's what I found so neat about Gateway, is that you have the opportunity to have a child understand what it's like to live in a Christian family, and to see that, and to see how a man and a woman treat each other in a Christian marriage, and how they treat their children. The same girl I said had a hard time leaving, like one of our grandchildren was at Oak, and Paul was talking to one of our grandchildren, was sitting on the couch talking to them, and she was watching him. She's like, well, I just wanted to see how you handled that. I mean, they don't see things. Sometimes they're able and they want to soak it up. Sometimes they're resistant, okay? But their brain is still going to be there, and God can bring things to remembrance. So one of the favorite memories I wanted to share in regards to that was, and this happened to us twice. So Paul and I, we always fix breakfast together. I mean, I don't even know if I can fix breakfast without him by this time. You know, like he always made the juice. He's a morning person. He had stuff going. And so one time we were both in the kitchen, and we must have been kind of joking together or something, and a girl came out with her baby, and she's like, oh, you know, when I get older, you know, I want to be just like you guys. And that just meant so much to us. It's like they see a loving couple, and they're like, it gives them something to aspire to. Because unfortunately, the commandment that talks about adultery, like we were talking about 10 Commandments earlier, you know, the whole sex thing, it's like, that's just something you do. Yeah. It's not something you savor. They don't have a high view of it. It's not, and then another time, this is in a different house, but I can still remember, it didn't have that long ago. But so there's a certain dish I fix every Sunday morning, you know, and Paul had the eggs all beaten for it, and I was cooking the potatoes for it, and so we were both right there.
I'm hungry right now.
and so like we're pouring the eggs over it, you know, and she just looks at us and she's like, oh, I just want to be, so like we're side by side working together, and she just looked at us, I just want to be like you guys when I'm older, you know. And that's just the warmest thing. It just warms the cockles of your heart, you know. So those kinds of things are some of my favorite memories.
You know, I kind of see we're kind of nearing towards the end of our questions and our time, but this question is not on there, so I apologize. I know you looked over your questions, but I know currently we have openings for house parents, and that's something that throughout the years has been somewhat consistent. That in the Word of God it says that the harvest is ready, but we're the laborers. And I think there's been challenges, but I'm curious could you speak to somebody who's maybe feeling God prick at their heart, or maybe challenging them to consider being a house parent? What are your thoughts, or what would you say to that couple that's considering coming out and being a house parent in Gateway Woods? Or maybe they don't know it yet. I mean, what you say actually.
Oh no! Do not do not put that burden on.
No, I'm not. It's God that works in our hearts to lead us here.
It would be really hard for me, because there are hard times that you just have to feel called,
Absolutely.
But what's neat is that I just can remember times in the morning when we lived at Oak. I'd had this little ritual. I'd get dressed, I'd walk out, I'd go back, I'd prop open the back door, which we closed at night, to the utility room, and I don't know, there's just a feeling of rightness.
Yeah.
And I would have I don't know, I would have to see what their questions are and what they would want to know about it. Because there are times when you're like, I don't want to see other people being yelled at. I don't know. It's just hard for me to say. It has to be a hard thing just to know that whatever comes, you have support. Like, that's one difference between we were here first time and second time. The first time it was a children's home trying to struggle. Like, Paul and I were the first alternate house couple, full-time alternate house couple they ever had. You're figuring things out. You're trying to get on your feet. They barely had counseling, if any. Now counselors are part of the treatment team. It's called the treatment facility. It's a much more, and we're also much more open to families, to help families, to try to get families back together. It's much more of a treating a lot more than, because I can remember when I first came here, I'm like, how can I expect us to walk in here and be any different than a child's own home? I mean, like the one child I mentioned that was from a church family. So her family sends her here. What do I have that they don't have at home? Yeah. Now it's much more a holistic approach to figuring out what's wrong and trying to get them what they really need, their family what they really need in order to work out any problems that are in the home. And that's a very encouraging thing to know how far we've come in that. So you feel a lot more supported, but there's still a lot of times where it's difficult. I can remember before we became full-time house parents, before like when I was working with Bethany and Ryan Donaghy, they had kind of a schedule of 10 days on, 5 days off. So we'd be off 10 days in the house and then 5 days on. And so when we become house parents, it's like that switch, and I'm like, oh, now it'll be 10 days on. How do you handle that? And you know what? It just happens. It flows. It really isn't a problem. Part of it is your mindset. Part of it is I don't know what it is, but I don't know. It's just you go there. Sometimes you almost dread it, and yet when you're there, it's like it feels right. Yeah. And you just take it a day at a time, basically. Yeah. I don't know if that's encouraging. I mean, I really.
I think it's
just such an individual thing. Yeah.
It really is, and I would say to kind of piggyback and maybe wrap things up too on that ourselves. I really think there's a call to come out here. This is domestic mission field. The kids you're working with, it's tough. They're tough situations. But on the same token, if God's leading you there, His grace is going to provide. He's never going to lead you in a place
that's kind of what I said in a very nice way. So.
Yeah, that He's not going to walk with you through those tough times. And so, and realize that, hey, when it's all said and done, we've had the opportunity to plant seeds, and had the opportunity to let God kind of use us and grow us. So, amen. So I've really enjoyed the time. Are there questions that we have? Okay, we got a few more
comments. There's a lot of people pouring on the love for both you and Paul, including your husband. he thinks you're cute.
Good one. Brownie points for Paul. Awesome.
And he also wants to know, how can house parent children affect the house?
Well, my girls, it was a very precious thing, because I think they felt a part of the ministry, and they would try to befriend girls and be helpful, and there were times where we were in situations where they found it really hard because of sometimes the disrespect that was shown toward us. They would have a hard time. They would kind of withdraw a little bit, but they can be a big blessing,
Amen.
And I'm sure they learned a lot, and I feel like God was with them, because there were a lot of times I wasn't. So
I think your girls that I think Hope and Charity have turned out pretty good.
like I said, my kids are way better than I should have. I mean, they turn out way better than they should have, only because, like I said, I could say it's my mom's prayers, or
Sometimes
I don't know.
Sometimes
grace. Let's put it
it's
down to
grace.
grace.
I think there's also modeling. There's times I felt the exact same way that you have with our own kids. And I look at it and say, why are we so fortunate that all three of our kids walk with Christ, you know, and they have a heart to help other people. And sometimes you don't diminish the value of them seeing you serve, that there's an impact in just modeling that to your own kids. And I you know, and that's God's work in their heart. There
could be one little thing that we managed to do, because when you said that, it made me think of Andrew. When he graduated, he had a little speech that he said, and one thing he said in it was, you know, I know that mom and dad will always help other people, so that may be something that we did model. So maybe we did one thing right.
Probably more than that. That's a beautiful thing that God provides grace to kind of fill in the cracks. So.
Speaking of Andrew, he wants to know.
Look at that. You got your family's in full support today.
He wants to know if you've seen any escargot.
Not recently.
Escargot. Okay, that sounds like an inside.
It's an inside joke with the
Okay.
pictures.
Well, it's because I'm a bad joke teller.
Okay.
And one time at family camp, I went up and told a joke, and I muffed it. And the only people who laughed were my kids, because they thought it was so hilarious.
Because they knew the joke.
Yeah, that's you gotta love your family.
John
really.
wants to know who your favorite daughter-in-law is, but we won't go there.
Because it's so obvious.
Oh.
That's all the comments.
Okay, well, Leanne, I have really enjoyed our time today. It's really flown by, and I will echo this. I will echo this on my behalf and Chrissy's behalf. I know that we really enjoyed working with you and Paul. I think it was probably 2-3 months or ish. We had a time at Maple. I think we had 5 different alternates within a space within a year, which was kind of crazy.
That's tough.
And I know you guys did different houses, but we enjoyed our time with you. I really appreciate you guys' heart, you know, your heart for the kids. And I think sometimes when I look and reflect on the opportunities we have to leave a legacy, sometimes just being present and showing kids, modeling them what is love, modeling what a family looks like, leaves a lot more of an impact than we realize. And I know that the kids that were in our house had respect for you guys, and they may not always shown it, but I know that they cared about you. And I can think specifically of a number of ones that I've had interactions, or continue to have interactions, that thought very highly of you guys. And so thank you for your years of service, and I mean that on at least on
my
behalf.
49 years.
Yeah, well, yeah, your dog years, so 7.5 years is more than 49, because there's a half years. That's actually like 51 years. 51 and a half, if we're getting technical. But thank you. We appreciate it. So.
Well, thank you.
Anyways, I think with that, we're going to sign off until next week. Thanks again, Leanne. God bless you all.